everybody for joining last minute. So this all came about because a random question was asked in our so I know some of you did not go to Shifter Summit, but we have an ongoing chat in Shifter Summit, and there was a question that was asked. I'm just going to pull it up because Simon chimed in, and I was like, I think everybody would like to kind of discuss this. So we're gonna kick the discussion off with this particular topic, but then we can open it up to whatever. But I kind of wanted to pick Simon's brain on this a little bit. He said, I'd sign them up on a retainer contract, lock them in. You can dangle carrots in the contract that don't take away from your bottom line, and it helps them significantly to even out their cash flow and yours. Message me if you want to get on a call to discuss how I structure mine. And then I forced Simon into getting on this call to talk about it.
Hello,
So,
everyone.
and then anything else that opens up, because it's always a pleasure talking to Simon, and it's a wealth of knowledge, and people enjoy talking with him. So,
I really love watching Stephen Magnet drink bone broth. That's why I'm here.
dude, that's a regular evening thing for us. We'll
Oh my
invite you to our
God.
calls.
Wow.
Recording in progress.
Let's keep that on mentorship calls only, please. Mentorship calls only.
So
very good.
So let's go into this. So do you work regularly? Like, do you do retainer setups with any of your clients currently? Or is that like a regular practice that you have?
It is regular. The first time I started doing it would have been maybe 2014. And it's then it was a learning exercise and something I didn't know a lot about. And as is what happens when we try something for the first time, we there are invariably going to be mistakes, things to discover, sharp edges to round off, but you can't know anything beyond trying it. And so I think as well armed as you can be, as well designed as things can be, you do also have to just put your best foot forward and try it out and be willing to get it wrong, be willing to get and ask for feedback from your clients along the way. But I think if you're offering something that's got value to it, and by that I mean value to you first and foremost, and to your client, then they're going to listen. You've got an audience. They already employ you. To what degree can vary. They may use other photographers as well. They may just use you. But you'll be able to do what I did, which was recognize that some clients, the ones you particularly enjoy working with, I think that would be the first qualification I would put against this. The people you really enjoy working with, write a list of who those people are, and you may come up with 6 top clients, just for argument's sake. For me, 6 is a good number because the level of service that I offer and include in the retainer, what I call the photography plan, really only allows 6 of my best clients to do it. And it's nice to have some sort of scarcity element to this so that there are only 6 as well that you're offering it to. And to be able to offer this sincerely, authentically, and with all the passion and energy you bring to the work you want to do and to this, whatever your photography plan ends up being, it's probably only going to be about 6, at a push, maybe 8. For some of you, maybe even before. The first time you do it, you may want to just try it out for a few or 2. The benefit primarily that your clients will latch onto straight away is evening their cash flow up, so that when they get to a busy period in the year, instead of all of that money going into one area at one time for those photo shoots, that it's spread out over a 2-year period. And I say 2 years because that's the amount of time that I think is quite useful in terms of the amount of planning that I like to do. It's a year goes too quickly. 2 years is quite good. 3 years is quite a long time. So 24 months, I think, is good. And the best person to talk about the planning of a project is invariably the architect, but are they very good at it? No, they're actually terrible at it. Architects are always in the middle of answering 1,000 questions, providing solutions to very demanding clients. So they're not really looking down the road to what's next, but we can. And that's where we come in, and we can say, listen, ask some well-aimed questions. And the first one would be a feeling out question, like, okay, well, if we were able to plan, look ahead at some of the shoots you've got or the completed projects you've got coming up over, say, a 2-year period, would you be interested in a photography plan where instead of paying it all at once, that we spread it out over 2 years on a monthly payment? I mean, it's a pretty easy question to ask. They'd be like, well, yeah, that sounds good. And they might have another question. And the other question might be, why would I do that? And you'd say, well, it's easy. You even out the cash flow. You get me to help plan these projects ahead so that you can focus on what you do best. It's a really easy sell. And I think it brings even more importance to those people you approach being people you already enjoy working with, people you already know quite a bit about, because then half of the unknowns that could turn into it being a total shit show are ruled out. The benefits for us is that if you have 6 clients paying you a fixed amount every month, you kind of like, well, that's the mortgage covered, or that's, the girl's schooling and the mortgage covered, or whatever it is. But psychologically, it's fucking great, actually, because we're used to sort of, month by month, week by week, sometimes like, well, we don't know what's around the corner, and the horizon line gets a little blurry, and that's kind of, we get used to it, but it's still frustrating. And so if we have things like, 6 clients signed up to a fixed amount for 2 years, psychologically, that's awesome. And you can then do things like, start putting in your diary for that project, that's 6 months away. Start lining it up. It's all about preparation for the execution on that day. Like, instead of just turning up to the house and there's a giant trampoline in the front yard and the irrigation goes off at 5, you've had time, because you know about the project well ahead of time, to start planning things, to call the homeowner and say, listen, can you send me a few snaps of these main living areas? And this is 3 or 4 weeks out. So you can get a sense of how they're living in it, so that if it's, I don't know, near the coast and it needs a window clean, you can start talking to the architect and the homeowners about making sure it's ready, so that when you turn up on the day, you've set it up to be the best day possible, the most enjoyable, not distracted by these absolutely filthy windows, a trampoline in the front yard, and the irrigation that goes off at 5 p.m. Because if that happens, there's no one to blame except for you. And so if this sort of level of planning occurs naturally within this photography plan, then why does that not naturally occur in your regular day-to-day business with those other clients too? It should be consistent. So if it's not happening already, it's like a hygiene check. It's like an audit on who's showing up. Who are you being for your clients when you do this work? It's a nice way to check in. So even if you strangely never executed a photography plan, if you just went through the process of what would be a premium level of service for my clients, what would that look like, and wrote it all down, it's a nice check-in for you. Like,
Yeah.
What am I doing? What am I up to? What could be better here? How am I going to separate myself from the rest of my competition?
When you say premium level, so are you changing? Obviously, you're spreading that over the course of 2 years, but are you changing how you're calculating what that total might be that you're splitting up over the course of several years? Are you changing that based on the level of service you're going to provide, or is it more just the value is in that splitting up the cost? I don't know if that makes sense.
I don't reduce the price because they've signed up for this. Like, I don't see any benefit to that.
Do you increase the price is actually more what I was wondering.
Sure. Yeah, in a way I do. I don't make it a I don't make it more expensive. In fact, it's tailored to that client depending on who they are. And if I know, like a good example of that would be in Central Otago, which is in the deep south of the South Island of New Zealand, by far and away, you know, relatively speaking, a small town, but a busy place for architecture because of the destination. It's beautiful mountains. It's stunning down there. And so the architects who are the best down there, who do the best work, they're often working within a very tight community of people. Different to say a New York or a LA or an Auckland, a big city where you get to choose lots of different contractors to work with. It won't be the same people all the time. It'll be different people all the time. I know with this client in the South Island, she's working with the same people all the time. So what's useful to me in terms of that additional license shared cost way of doing things is that my incentive to her is to get all of those people in on this. So there's sort of a hybrid photography plan where, because I know that about her and how she does her business, and it's different to say an Auckland-based architect, I'll tailor that, incentivize that based on my knowledge of that. So there's not a rubber stamp in it. It's not the same for everyone. That's a nice example of how it can be different and what I might do to incentivize bringing in all those other parties every time I do a shoot, so that it turns a one party, maybe two party shared cost shoot into 8. And that's like the difference between a $6,000 shoot and a $16,000 shoot, or, loosely speaking. It's about knowing your client, knowing those things about them. And that's where I will always come back to choosing those clients who you already really love working with. How you can easily imagine it can be even better, or a higher level of service, or more communication, more planning, so that it's easier for them. And the incentivization can come through not just knocking $500 off your bottom line, because I mean that's $500, don't do that. But something that's an add-on that gives the appearance of being really good value, but actually in the end actually just adds to your bottom line. Like licensing, like maybe at the moment they don't get any images included in that base fee, but now you are going to include 10 or something like that. It's a little bit for a lot.
Bethany had a question. Bethany had put her hand up.
So when you're talking about retainers with these clients, they're not all local. These are clients all over. So is it retainer plus whatever travel expenses on top of that?
Yeah, great question, Bethany. There are some things you just won't be able to include in it. And I spelled that out really clearly in the proposal. It's the document it's tricky because you want to keep it super simple, because no one loves reading fine print, and they certainly don't want to pay their lawyer to come in and have to read it and go, yes, this is okay, and sign off on it. It needs to be as straightforward as possible, but cover your ass completely as well. So there's a fine balance. You can include quite a bit, but yeah, travel you can't. It's too hard. So you will invoice for that afterwards. And that makes sense. I think that's easy. And they go, well, yeah, that makes sense. In one case, for one particular client, one of the incentives was that I include one additional license at no cost. That's because I know they're going to bring 5 others. And what I stipulate around that one license that's included at no cost is that before the shoot happens, they have to nominate who that is, so I know. Because, there's paperwork and it needs to be signed off. It needs to be made official, and everyone knows what page they're on.
Michael Young has a question.
So I'm wondering, Simon, if you can kind of start from the beginning of what it looks like and what's included, because I'm looking at this from, hey, I've got a single shoot and here's the cost of it. Let's say it's $5,000 for round numbers, and you're going to spread that out over X number of years or whatever it might look like. If there's like a second shoot and a third shoot, how does that get accrued on top of this? So is this more like a financing setup where you're like, hey, here's the cost of the shoot, this is spread out over 2 years? Or is it
Yeah.
more like a retainer setup in what we think in the US is a retainer, which is you pay me monthly and I give you specific services each month for what you pay me? What is the setup?
It's sort of a hybrid in a way, because what I'm doing is I'm saying to make it worthwhile for them and for me, there has to be a minimum of 6 shoots, especially if it's over 2 years. Otherwise, don't really bother. There's not enough going on. That's why I'm picking those clients that I know well, that I know, more or less I can be assured that they will have at least 6 shoots. I mean, one client came back to me and said, yeah, we're in. Awesome. And here are 20 shoots. I'm like, okay, that's great. And then suddenly that monthly payment is fucking humongous. So sometimes you just don't know, and that's a great surprise. Others that you assume might have 6 shoots, they don't, because it's a quiet patch for them, or that 2-year period. There's more planning, drawing involved than actual building and completion. So there's a bit of fact finding you need to do, but I draw the line at 6 projects. I make it 2 years. I spell out within that, depending on who the client is and what sort of projects that they produce, I'll have maybe large, medium, and small, and have a price associated with each of those. So like on a regular, if it's a residential architect, I would typically show up in the morning and leave when it's dark again, and there's a price I can nominate that sits well with that. And I will include, in one case, I include 10 pictures, 10 selects within that. And they may have some projects that, okay, it's not really a full day, it's not that kind of project, it's maybe a half day where I go in at one time of day, in the morning, it's a few hours, and then I have a price based on that kind of shoot for those projects. So they don't feel they need to go to someone else for those. I make sure that that fits in, and they want me to do it too, so that there's continuity in the shoots on their website, so it doesn't look like half a dozen people have shown up. You want to motivate people to get you to shoot all their stuff. So that's another way to incentivize, or another way to think about how it is you structure that. And then for a smaller project like that, I may include only 5 additional pictures at no extra cost. Not 10, because it's sort of scaled,
For sure.
within it. So there are things we can really nut out, nail down, define really clearly. What is the offer? What does it include? And then we've got something. We've got a figure. We can propose that to them in the document and say, this is what it looks like, and get them to sign off on it.
So it sounds like if you're doing 6 shoots at, let's say it's $5,000 a shoot, you're taking $30,000, dividing that by 24, and that's the base setup.
Yep, that's the monthly invoice.
Okay. And then if there's
about, have they had their staff portraits taken any time recently? think about other things that they can get you to do for them that you can include in there.
Mhm.
Mm.
And then so for the cost sharing participants that come on and you're adding licensing for those, let's say you've got a cost share participant coming in and they're doing $1,500 in licensing or $2,000 in licensing, you're adding that to the retainer, or you're just putting them up more on like financing. Hey, you can pay this $500 a month for 4 months.
In one example, it's really clear that I can include certain people over and above the initiating client, my architect client,
Mhm.
and that's easy to define. Other clients, it's easier if it's left until afterwards. And so those additional license opportunities happen after and won't be included in the plan.
Okay, great.
They can
Thank you.
be spelled out how that looks, like what those costs are and what the benefit is to getting involved. For example, before the shoot happens, what it looks like before the shoot, the agreement
Mhm.
can be quite different to maybe it's a per image price after the shoot in terms of licensing. So you're incentivizing those people, teaching them to be mindful early and get involved early, and create an incentive for them to do that. It doesn't mean it'll happen overnight for everyone, but you really want to be the official set of pictures that goes out into the world, and that benefits you and benefits the whole project. Instead of half a dozen different photographers showing up at different levels, different varying quality, you really want to be the official set of pictures that shows up in the world. So you need to try and incentivize those builders who aren't used to spending much money on a shoot to get in there and be a part of that gang, And other builders they're already switched on, and they're willing to spend the money, and they understand the value of photography. So you're dealing with different people in different value sets. The ones you understand that might need a little bit of coercing, a bit of incentivization, then horses for courses.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Brad has a question. Brad, I regret I didn't get a chance to talk to you at Shifter Summit, but I hope to someday. But you have a question?
It wasn't a question, and I actually have to run real quick, but I just wanted to add something to Simon's thoughts because I've done some retainers. The two things I just wanted to, the term retainer, and Simon, I'm sure will agree, it's a legal term, and it is a guarantee that if they sign a retainer, it's not an advance, it's not, it is a legal agreement, and you want to deal with retainers. The other thing I was going to say real quickly is that when I've had a retainer, and I don't know whether Simon, you've done it this way, but if it's been for 12 months, 18 months, 24 months, basically we write an estimate for that period of time and then break it up into those number of payments. And at that end of that period of time, either there is a settle up or we create an advance towards the next retainer. So if we've gone over budget, I get whatever we've gone over budget. And if we come under budget, that ends up being a credit going forward. And it just it ensures that you don't want to get to the end of a retainer and have a client asking you to out of pocket money back to them because they didn't do the amount of work that you expected to do in that period of time. And I'm more just trying to let people know things to consider that you often don't consider, especially if you're doing it for the first time. And I'm sorry, but I do need to leave, but I just wanted to throw that in. And Simon, I'm sure you can expound upon that.
Good points, well made. Thank you, mate.
Take care.
On you, Brad. Thanks. It's a good point, and therein lies the reason to keep it tight. And I think that's where, if you're able to define and put a price next to things that it does include, by virtue of that, what it leaves out, leaves out the room for interpretation. There's no gray area here. It's black and white. This is what it includes. It doesn't include travel, for example, that came up earlier. So you keep it locked down, then there's no room for overruns or underruns.
There was
As
a
Brad pointed out.
I'm not sure if you've ever had any of those nightmare scenarios you talked about, Simon, but the one I've technically had 2 retainer clients, but one of them was somewhat unrelated to architecture. The one that I did have that was architecture was an absolute nightmare for me, and that was because, I mean, it wouldn't have been an issue had I done half the things we've already talked about on this call, but just for the sake of sharing so that people know to be cautious of these things, my retainer was for a year for a client that I only done 1 shoot for. I didn't know them that well. I essentially did the same thing. We estimated there would be 5 shoots throughout the entire year. They already had 5 projects in mind, and they wanted photo and video for it. I calculated the cost, no discounts, but I kind of also did I'll throw a few extra things in there if applicable. And we got, after the 3rd shoot, the client started becoming kind of unhinged, and their personality literally completely changed. And I think there was just a lot of personal things going on, but they ended up becoming quite a nightmare to deal with. And that's not just me being dramatic. Like this lady was literally screaming on the phone at the top of her lungs, and then at the next moment would have the sweetest voice, just very unhinged. And I essentially, I just terminated the retainer, and I compensated them for what they hadn't received yet. So cautionary tale, my lesson learned just from listening to Simon alone is, these should be for maybe clients you already have a good relationship with, your top clients. And I think having those conversations that really are custom tailored to what they need and what their actual needs are. If I would have done those 2 things, I probably would have avoided that scenario altogether. And I've also heard of people who on retainers who had pleasant experiences. Adam Taylor, he's not here tonight, but he's got a really classic one that's similar to the experience Simon's shared as well. So Simon, have you had any nightmare situations that you've kind of lessons learned doing this thing?
Nothing significant, fortunately, or dramatic. That sounds really like a good fodder for a TV show. Your one, it sounds awesome.
It was terrific.
Yeah. So mine were more tinkering, sort of refining type lessons from when I first did it in 2014. And then my CFO, my marketing manager, aka the person who makes me look good, D, gave it the right kind of, on the latest sort of version that I brought out for this next 24-month period, some refinement that I probably couldn't have given it by myself. So having those extra set of eyes from someone you trust, and perhaps whose aesthetic you admire as well, generally, or their style, they can add something you can't by yourself. So I'd try and bring someone in who you respect. I mean, it doesn't need to be, paying someone else to get this across the line, but, maybe there is someone who can help tighten things up or ask questions that you couldn't possibly ask yourself, to make sure that this is a really good, genuine offer that could only have come from you, I think that would be important. I think, like I said at the top, there's only so much you can know before you kick off and try something. It's that tip of the iceberg thing. You become an explorer. You become way more knowledgeable after you actually have given it a crack.
Does anybody have any questions pertaining to retainers, or any thoughts they want to share or experiences? Otherwise, we can move on to a different topic. So who's been dying to ask Simon a question that hasn't been able to? Feel free to chime in. I see Eric Stoudemeyer possibly unmuting.
The only other thing I'd throw in for the retainer conversation is that if anyone wants to book like any kind of mentoring call where we get to dive on this, together one-on-one and take a good look at my model and how that's made up and what it looks like, feel free to message me and let's book something in.
Yeah, I'll second that. And I think there's a few people who went through Simon's mentoring on this call. And it's been invaluable for me. It's changed my career in some ways. So in the way I approach things. And even this short conversation we've had so far, I mean, I'm ready to make a couple phone calls. So
Awesome.
Okay, I've got a question.
yeah.
You got me to unmute. So
Good.
it sounds like I need to actually sit down with a client and look at the actual number of projects they have finishing in the next 24 months. And I'm basically making an estimate based on the expected projects that they'll finish. It's not. So,
Yeah.
and maybe if they're so maybe some of these projects are 3-day shoots and some of them are half-day shoots. I'm just actually adding up, like making a giant estimate for everything. And then maybe if I don't want to get overpaid at the end of that, maybe we skip the last project, assuming it's gonna be delayed outside that 24 months or something, just to be safe.
Yeah, great question. They can replace that, but I think you need to define there's some fact finding in the process. So the end of the process is you've got as much information as you think you can possibly get from them, including the name of the project, your assumption of that being a 1-day shoot versus a 3-day shoot for project C, and you've got all that information. And then the final thing is you've got this really gorgeous looking document that's functional and watertight that they can sit down with their group of people or whoever it is and go, that's really clear. This one I would make a 2-day. This one it's probably not going to finish in that 24 months. And you can say to them, well, if one of these does fall out, then we can replace it with another, or that can carry over into the next retainer. But I think that's exactly the type of thing you need to be clear about in the document.
Okay. And then it sounds like I've never done a retainer, is that you're still at the end of the day billing for the actual fees and expenses that are accrued over the 24 months. You're not agreeing to shoot
Go over and
more
above
days or
costs.
fewer days for like a flat rate.
Yeah, I mean, they can also, if another project came up and they want to add it in, I mean, you need to be able to account for that too, right?
Yeah.
If what was clearly defined as a 1-day shoot really needed to be a 2-day shoot, then you're billing that separately over and above.
Okay.
And you would get agreement from them for that, knowing that what you know about that document you created and what they know and they're clear about is that, okay, this wasn't in the agreement. It was in as a 1-day shoot. It's clearly needs to be a 2-day shoot. So I'll be invoicing you separately for that extra amount.
Or like you said, I think you said earlier, you could also use to get creative, like headshots maybe, or maybe progress documentation or something like that, right? You could fill in.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sell them on a construction shoot. I mean, I really love going. Some people hate them. I really enjoy them. They may have a special project, that's going to take 5 years. This amazing, beautiful home for this, family, and there's a legacy element to it. They want to maybe document that halfway through, or they hadn't thought of that, but you did. And you say, listen, I think this sounds like a special project. Maybe at the end, there's, there could be a really lovely book or an album at least of these beautiful pictures. How about we start documenting it along the way and include that in this retainer, in this plan? So you're the salesman, you're the creative. Be creative, be the salesman. Ask the questions. They can only say, well, no, or actually I hadn't thought of that. That's awesome. let's do that.
Simon, real quick on just kind of that process too, and I'm trying to remember. I did a quick Google, but I didn't. Is the amortization, and this might be different in the US, but is the amortization also something that the accounting departments can write, not write off, but they're allowed to spread these investments, and therefore it's a benefit for an accounting purpose? Have you come across that?
No,
Okay.
just that it does even up the cash flow. You know, they're often in small businesses too, right? Like us. They may have 3 or 4 people in the office, or 30 or 40 people in the office, depending on the size of the practice. But even if they have 30 or 40 people, they've got an accountant who will say the same thing as we would if we had 3 or 4 people, is that, you know, let's try and even up that cash flow. So the immediate obvious benefit to any business is that it does that. And that's where it really, you know, generally has to be a minimum of 6 to be worthwhile for anyone to be noticeable or useful. The tax purposes and benefits, I don't know, it might be specific to even the state you live in versus, you know, California might run differently to here in New Zealand. I'm not sure, but there could be some research you might do and find a little other way to be able to sell it even harder, you know, based on that kind of information.
Cool. Thank you.
You're welcome, Andy.
Bethany's got another question.
Well, actually, it was less of a question, and just an experience kind of going along with, I mean, not exactly, you know, Simon was relating how you're the salesman and you're the creative. And I used to get lost thinking like, I'm not a salesperson, I'm just a creative person, but really they go hand in hand because there are so many different products that we can potentially upsell to our clients that we could even include as value adds. That's something that I did recently with a client. I just started including a drone orbit of an area where they're building an office that they need another tenant in the office they just built. So, and that's something that the client is just eating up. The invoice is higher, but you include a value add that doesn't take a lot more additional time to kind of make it worth it for that client. And they feel like they're getting this extra amazing thing that's useful for them, especially from a marketing perspective.
Totally, the perception of value, you can't replace it. Like that's awesome, and you design that, like you offer that up. You know, as small business people, there are at least a dozen things we'd prefer not to do because they're so fucking boring and tedious, but we still have to be good at them because at certain points in our career, we can't afford to, you know, outsource that. So we do it. So the satisfaction has to come in being good at all of those things. So we're kind of like a veritable Swiss Army knife, you know, being good at lots of stuff and being good at those things that are tedious and boring so that when we get to the shoot day, we get to enjoy it even more. I think that's what it's about.
And those things that we find tedious and boring, our clients think are amazing when we're just like, really? Like, it's not that special, but we hold ourselves to such a high standard that we forget that our clients are, they're a lot more easily impressed than we may be considering the line of work that we're in versus them. So.
Yeah, exactly.
So is there like a standard baseline you go with? Like, is it 12 shots, 10-hour shoot, includes assistant, and that's your day, and you're multiplying that from your 6 shots and spreading that out? Or how is that working as far as what's an average one of these look like? What are you providing?
Everyone's running a different flavor here, right? Like we're all photographers. It's generally within the architectural realm. Includes lots of different types of clients and across different countries. So the way you do your business is probably in terms of process and the shoot, you know, it's probably different to how I do it. So it needs to be your flavor applied to this. For me, I'm, you know, for a house shoot, for example, I'm I turn up early and I leave late. And in summertime, that could mean 16, 17 hours. I might disappear in the middle for a cheeky swim in the lake or a glass of Pinot, who knows? But as you know, whether it's winter or summer, it's about the early and the late, and sometimes in the middle, it's not quite as useful. So how you structure, how you spend your day, that's up to you. And for me, time is not number one on the spreadsheet. It's an ingredient, but it's down the order. Number one on the spreadsheet is me showing up, like getting the results and then how they use them. That's up there. How I spend my time to get to that, that's up to me. I'm not a contractor. I'm not a jib stopper or a wall painter. So if I get better at what I do and I'm charging based on my hourly rate, the better I get, the less time it may take, and then I'm charging less. Well, that seems a bit pointless to me. So I don't have a time-based fee. I have a creative fee. All that includes quite a few things, but the main thing is it includes me showing up and getting the results. My clients are paying for the results, and then how they use them, and then who else is using them. That contributes. So time is an element, but it's way down the list. So I have a creative fee that covers me showing up and covers off whether it's summer or winter. Sometimes it'll include, particularly in these photography plans, it may include a set number of images at no extra cost. But then over and above that, there'll be a per price image for images they choose over and above. Some shoots for sure, it'll be a no-brainer that an assistant is necessary. So that'll be included in the photography plan as well. Others where it might be that smaller house and it's only showing up for a few hours, probably not. So it's horses for courses. That's kind of how I work. So that's what's applied to the rationale and the planning and what's spelled out and what's not. And that might be different for you, Eric.
So you're charging those as a fraction of a shoot if you're not using an assistant and it is a half day? Like if you're saying there's 6 shoots over this 2 years, does that count as a half shoot?
I spell out what those half shoots are, and I can name the project. It's all in the planning, the question asking, because they don't typically need or want to do that until I'm asking those questions. And they can say, oh, actually, if I do look at that in the next 24 months, what's going to finish? Oh, it's June Street, it's Marble Place. We might sneak, Triangle Castle in there. They know. I don't fucking know. That's why I'm asking them, and they may come back to you with like 23 shoots. You're like, holy shit, you guys are busy. That's awesome. Okay. And then you may need to ask a few more questions. Okay. This sounds like it's a full day shoot. Is this a full day shoot? And then they can tell you. And they go, this one, we kind of love it, but we weren't, we weren't on site observation. That was up to the builder. So let's call that one a half day. So there's a lot of fact finding needed so that you feel comfortable going back with what should be a fully fledged, fleshed out proposal that they go, yep, nailed it, sign the bottom line. Or they might have just one or two little tweaks to make. You make the tweaks and then they sign it. It shouldn't be like you get to that point and there's like half a dozen things to reroute. Otherwise, you haven't asked enough questions. You're their planning guy. You're the guy who's looking down the road for them because they're shit at it.
Simon, for those bigger picture kind of retainers that you're talking about, does it help also with like the scouting? If there's so much in a certain region, do you ever kind of say, hey, listen, we're doing this on X day, so don't worry about the scout because I'm gonna, be right there. So on my way back, I'll do something, or is that I don't typically include scouts just because of the region that I'm in, and some of these projects are a little bit further distance, but I'm kind of specific around those ones you were mentioning that were further away.
Mm. Often for me, there's very little opportunity to scout, and in a way, I prefer not to. I like showing up with fresh eyes. It's enough for me. Some projects, the client would prefer that for whatever reason, and that's fine. And then I will factor that in, and that does cost. And not just because I'm down there or whatever. If I've costed it, and then along the way, I know I'm going to be there, and it could happen while I'm there. I'll let them know out of courtesy, and then that's great. That's an extra. That's a bonus. But I'll start off with that being a hard cost. It'll never start off as oh yeah, I might be down there then. It doesn't start that way. If that happens, great, but it starts with a hard cost. But in most cases, all I need is if it's say 2 months out, Andy, from a house shoot, I might go, well, can I see some snaps, some progress snaps, whatever was, recent, and you may have some plans you want to mark up or give me even more insight into what the project is about. And that way, as you know, we can then, it's easier to price the shoot or understand that it's a 1 day or a 2 day or a half day or whatever. And then as we get closer, say it's, the owners are now in there, they've unpacked all their boxes, and we're 3 weeks out from the shoot, and the client doesn't mind us liaising with the homeowner. We can say to the homeowner, listen, really looking forward to the shoot. We're a few weeks out. I'll get in closer. I'll get in touch closer to nail down which day it is so we get the best weather. Would you mind taking a few iPhone snaps of the main living area and the main elevations so I can just see how things are looking? And they're like, usually because they've said yes to a shoot, they're pretty house proud and they don't mind. They'll send you some snaps. And that helps me no end. Like, I can't even tell you, like, if to them, having that marble statue or whatever the fuck, in the main foyer, would absolutely, ruin the pictures. But might be so important to them that they go, that's non-negotiable, that's staying. But unless you saw the snaps that you'd asked for, you wouldn't even know it existed to even ask that question. And for the most part, most homeowners don't mind moving stuff or someone coming in and moving some things. I've had some shoots where it was 3 or 4 weeks out. The house is filled with just the most awful furniture you could possibly imagine from their previous house. And I've said to the architect, listen, this is just not cool. Can we, and this is just like the ultimate, the ideal scenario, could we, if the homeowner approves, move their stuff out? And I've got a client who's willing to come in with a lot of beautiful furniture and objects and style that whole house. Would they be up for that? And they know their client really well, probably better than me. I'm not going to go in and offend them. They'll know how to ask if that's possible, or whether it's even something they'd be willing to ask. And you'd be surprised what happens. So it's worth getting those snaps and asking early how it all looks, what's going on. Someone's just knocked at my door, so I'm just going to be 1 second. Hold the line.
Well, while Simon steps away, be thinking about any other questions you guys might want to ask him. He's an open book for the most part. And I think anybody who's worked with him will attest to just the insight he's able to offer on maybe something somebody's struggling with or whatever you can think of. I also heard he does a really good American accent. So if anybody wants to challenge him to do his American accent, that might be entertaining for us.
Does that mean that we get to try a Kiwi accent? and
He
butcher
would.
it horribly.
I think he would appreciate it. And bonus points if you can throw in some goofy lingo that they use.
Some slang.
Yeah.
Hello, thank you. Just having the gas meter replaced, so it was that guy.
All right. So I think we've beat that topic to death, but we can certainly, if there's any other questions anybody has about that. And Simon, I don't know how much time you have. I don't want to keep you too long.
I'm for a half hour.
Okay.
Easy. Yep.
You just let us know when it's time for you to hop off.
Thanks.
And I wanted to invite anybody who had any other topics they wanted to maybe chat about or bring up. It's a really good opportunity to do so. I have a question. Has your recent Instagram situation, has that impacted I know the answer, but has that impacted your business at all? Have you found that, I mean, knowing you, I know you get called regularly and it's not just because of your Instagram. So I'm kind of leading you a little bit, but has that Instagram had any kind of impact on your business at all that you've noticed so far?
Short answer is no. It's a great tool. It's been, if anything, really it's really revitalized how I see it working for me. And it wouldn't have probably happened without that happening. It was seemingly a little bit out of the blue, and then being blackmailed was extra spice in
I don't
there.
know anything about
But
that.
yeah, someone who complained then emailed me to try and blackmail me.
Wow.
Asking me to pay them a huge amount of money. But in their email, I could tell that it was a copy and paste, and that's something they regularly do to try and earn money, which is kind of sad for them. But
Steve Magner tries doing that to me all the time.
yeah, he's all about
Yeah,
it.
it's too bad he didn't offer up a retainer situation, then maybe you would have bought it.
Simon, was this a client that was doing this with you?
The blackmailing thing?
Yeah.
No,
Okay.
just someone out of the.
So it was someone completely different than who had complained about your account.
Oh, the same person who complained. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, because when
the person who complained wasn't even a client, it was stranger.
Stranger. Even after they were tagged. So in Instagram's eyes, even if you tag someone, they can complain and you can be yoinked off. It's a strange kind of yeah. Pixel land is a strange little world. And so we place a lot of value on it, but I'm mindful that the importance of the reality of things, that it's good, all good and well to have a representation in things like Instagram and whatever else you want to upload. But the reality of things is far more important, meeting up with your clients for a coffee, dropping in a print just because you really love that picture that you shot of that recent project. And then they get to open up this beautifully wrapped, lovely print. And that element of surprise, the reality of that, you can't replace with pixels. It's just not possible. So I think it really showed me how valuable all of that is. And yes, how we show up in pixel land is important, and there's some strategies that are necessary, and you want to get your authentic self across as much as you can and all of that. But that's also going to change around you. So, in some instances, in ways that you can't even imagine or control, you know, like this happening. But I see every new experience as an opportunity, and I was quite liberated by it happening, if I'm honest with you.
Yeah, and I half brought it up because I haven't really been utilizing Instagram the way you're supposed to. And I haven't my business has only like done better. Yeah, it's the slow season right now for me at least, but I have just found that Instagram I think it's important, quote unquote, to an extent, but I don't put as much weight on it as I maybe once did. And I found that like old fashioned cold outreach, like just shooting an email or, you know, going in, if you notice a project that's going up from a client you want to work with, and just grabbing a few progress photos of that and maybe sending it to them, or just simply asking if you can drop a book off. Those have been working really well for me, especially over the last couple weeks. And in the past, but like I've been really putting a lot of effort into the old school stuff, quote unquote, and a little less effort into Instagram. But just wanted to get kind of your take on that.
Yeah, I think in a world where uh, we're able to digest thousands of pictures every day, and that's just through Instagram, let alone considering other venues for digesting pictures like Facebook, and some people are quite involved with other things like LinkedIn. It's hard to sort of show up in a unique and special way. So people use different methods to do that, and reels and stories and posts, if we use Instagram as an example. But I guess it really shows or asks the question, what are you motivated by? What is the motivation here? And I was able to, in this instance, ask myself again, if I look back over the past month and look at the void of the space that not being able to post memes has left, it actually, the world got a bit sadder for me, if I'm honest. It got a little bit less funny. That actually filled space in me that I really enjoyed. It just so happens the venue for that doesn't look like it can be Instagram anymore. So that leaves a new space for something else. And so without desperately trying to fill that space in with something new, I've just sort of been left holding that willingly, intentionally, just to see what sort of shows up for me, and I've really enjoyed that. What I'm mindful of first and foremost is that I really would like to be closer to my community, to you guys, to have time to engage in these conversations and ask questions and answer questions and be with my people. And for my clients, I don't think it gets any better than that. And if I can celebrate that recent win with my client who won that recent architecture award, and Instagram's a way to do that, or a space, then great. If that means sending them, because I heard about it through Instagram, because they're busy and they're not letting anyone else know except through Instagram, and I wouldn't have known otherwise, I'll send them a bottle of wine if they're a special client, and say, that's awesome that you won that for that project. But it's really, for me, it's about the currency of authenticity. We have the currency of monetary exchange. Of course, we need to be paid. Life is expensive. We have all these subscriptions that we're, shelling out for. It's a subscription-based life that we're living. But for me, I think there are other currencies that are much more valuable. And if we're tuned into those, if we're attuned to those things well enough, the money shows up anyway. So if we're tuned into the currency of authenticity, the currency of joy, the currency of obsession, the currency of what is the foundation beneath my feet when I'm standing where I stand? Where am I standing? Why am I standing here? If we're tuned into those things as currency, as a way to convey ourselves and our work, then I think we're onto something. And Instagram's a thing. It's changing every day. The way they do things changes every day. Can we keep up? It's fucking hard to keep up, but it's just a small vessel for a way of showing up amongst many ways of showing up. But I really feel like it got a bit smaller for me and the reality got a bit bigger, and I'm really grateful for that.
You said something just at the end there. I can't remember how you word it. It's like one of many ways to communicate, or however you put it. And I think that was kind of the point I was trying to get at. It's like Instagram isn't necessarily the end all be all. There's still other things to do that we should be doing. And it's not going to make or break your business necessarily. I know
it's not. And yeah, exactly. And so it's deciding, and there was an exercise we did during the Nashville workshops for those of you that did those, where everyone walked into the room and there's a roll of toilet paper in front of them. It's deciding what, and being able to communicate, define, distinguish, what are we distracted by? There's some things we're willing to be distracted by, and that's fine. Like, as long as you're able to distinguish what that is and how much credence that has, how much importance, what priority it has in your life, and really get close to that, define what that is. And if you look at your phone and suddenly it's 7 hours of Instagram, well, then maybe you haven't asked that question hard enough. So there are some distractions we can be willing to have, and that are quite useful, but have we put some useful constraints around it? Are there some things we're distracted by that actually we could do without?
Travis, you flashed a receipt to everybody. What was that? Was that
Travis?
Sorry.
Is that a receipt? Oh, that's toilet
Make
paper.
a lot of noise. So, but these are my notes from Simon's in Nashville. Yeah,
I love it.
just referencing the visual aid. Yeah,
You're a heavily distracted man, Travis.
Yeah, I did flush the one with distractions, but I didn't have a good notepad that day. So,
Travis, while you're up here, and Simon didn't put me onto this, but what was your experience with Simon's workshop?
Man.
Like, what was your big takeaway, or anything you can share?
Wow, it was really profound, just like the philosophical approach to how we work. And I don't know, it was kind of emotional, to be honest. There were people crying in the class, just how they connected with what he was saying. Just kind of a reminder of why we even started doing this in the first place. I think that was the biggest thing for me. That's why I was like seeking it out specifically. Because I mean, even this today, I was just like, like Simon's just like this guru. The way he speaks, so intentional. It's like moving. It's so deep. If you like, I feel like I needed more, because I feel like I missed something because it was just too deep, even when I had time to speak with him personally. But his experience in the industry, the quality of his work, and I think the character as well is just this. It's just an opportunity that you can't pass that up if you have a chance to interact with him. So that's what I took away from it. And I'm going to Japan, so
Nice.
Travis, thank you, mate. I'm honored by your words and I really appreciate it. Thanks.
Oh, my pleasure. Absolutely. I was not expecting to speak, so hope that came out okay.
Thank you, mate. I'm sort of welling up a bit. Thank you, bastard.
Good. You should. So am I.
I think everybody else has heard me fanboy over you for the last year or so, but you know, you already know how you've impacted me, and all started from that first day in LA, the shooting that house. First 45 minutes of watching you kind of changed everything for me. So, I don't know that anybody else has experienced working with you one-on-one like that on an assistant, but if anybody has the opportunity, it's worth it.
Thanks, Jordan.
Sure. Michael Young has a comment or question.
Question. And also, Simon, you kind of really changed my life as well. To the point that I even tried to kind of emulate your style in a recent presentation, which failed miserably, but you know, that's okay. I guess you have to have a certain kind of voice or way of figuring it out. So my question is about a hot topic that happened 2 weeks ago on a very long Instagram set of replies and comments. And I wanted to get your thoughts on one of their comments stood out, which is, hey, we have all of these new publishers, and these publishers, you know, they're not paying for licensing like they used to. And it used to be that maybe there were 10 publishers that actually publish editorial work, and now there's 50 or et cetera that are all trying to do it. Some of them still pay for image licensing, some of them don't. One of the things that really stood out in some of their comments was this question of, hey, we are the interior designer, or we're the architect. We're commissioning you to go ahead and do this. We understand print is totally fine, and to pay for, you know, print, asking our print publishers and our PR firms to get them to pay for that. But here on this other end of the spectrum, where these only purely digital editorial outlets, who will never pay, but me as the interior designer who commissioned you, we really need to be in these places for our businesses to survive. And so I was wondering what your thoughts were around the concept of image licensing in this kind of new world for editorial, not new world, but like in this world for editorial that's getting pushed back. And then if there is, what is your kind of happy medium, or what would you, when talking to these interior designers about it after the fact, like obviously there's a lot of education that has to go on beforehand, which clearly in some of these cases didn't happen. But let's say that that was covered, and let's say that the digital editorial was not in their license. How would you approach these interior designers who are adamant about, hey, I need digital usage included in this? You know, how would you kind of bridge that gap with them?
It's a really good question, Michael. And most of you know this, it's the Wild West with interior designers. You know, you get some exceptional, amazing, very professional interior designers who really understand and value what photography is. And they trust you. Some of them even trust you to be there on the day by yourself sometimes. You know, there's that level of interior designer at this end. And at the other end, it's a clusterfuck of all proportions. And they're just essentially professional shoppers. And at that point, it's almost retail. Like it's that tricky to deal with. And there's that amount of education required that it doesn't mean you shouldn't work with them, because some of them will someday, you know, be even better and maybe will become professional and start to understand the value of photography. So not to discount that, just to suggest that what are you up for? What level of educating are you willing to partake in order to work with that person? That's for you to decide. Some of them really, with a couple of well-aimed questions, will show quite clearly that they are someone you're not really willing to invest the time in. Others, with a few good questions, you'll say, well, maybe it's worth sitting down with them and having a chat just to at least find out a bit more. And I've had some clients like that, and 6-7 years later, they're awesome to deal with, and they're lovely. Their intentions were quite naive but honest, and it was worth it. Others, absolutely not. So it's really initially for sure working out whether they are someone you want to work with or not. And then it's easier to have conversations like is it worth your while paying extra to cover off situations like any and all internet-based magazines or not? Is it worth including an additional license for any and all editorial in print? It's really difficult, because how do you know what the success of that project looks like ahead of time? You don't. I've had some houses that have gone around the world 20 times and been published 40 times, and it's just too hard to know. Some projects that you think for sure were popular, for some reason the timing wasn't right. They just haven't been. So it's harder to sell people into the idea that they should pay extra for things like a print editorial license. The brave new world of pixel-based magazines, it's so new still that we haven't worked out useful ways to add licenses for that ad hoc. So in some ways, the perception is that it probably should be an add-on or included, because when something goes viral, then you've got no control of it anyway. If your client happens to create a project that's going to go viral, then, and you've supported them in that, and at least it allowed them to recognize the value of that, being that those are photos of the project, not the project itself, making that really clear distinction with them, and that they recognize that that is the case, then you're the good guy.
Hi, welcome to Starbucks. What do you need today? Can you get a grande Americano with the splash of half and half?
Yeah, oh my God.
Can you make it a venti? Actually, can you make it a venti?
Yeah, piccolo for me, please.
No, grande.
A grande?
Yes.
Oh my God. Love it. Is that Kalish?
It absolutely is.
Oh my God. Now we know his coffee order.
He totally did that on purpose. Totally did that on purpose.
Oh, that's delightful. That is delightful.
Now we know what your Starbucks order is, Stephen.
Look at him with his white interior. Yeah, we're here, buddy.
I don't know if you can hear us.
Oh, that's so good. That's so good.
Maybe he doesn't realize we're talking about him.
He may not. Kalish? Yeah, you, buddy. Hello.
His audio isn't working.
Oh, his audio isn't working. Okay.
Wow.
Your lips are moving, but nothing's
Yeah, your
coming
lips are moving, and you're not muted either. There's something going on with your audio.
I can hear you.
There you go.
We all know your Starbucks order now, Steve.
Don't you forget it.
Michael, I'm not sure if that helped answer your question or not. I sort of danced around it, but I think the point is the emphasis should be on, you know, who are you willing to work with? And you know, if it's in the interior design realm, it's a shit fight at the best of times. So pick your battles and have some really useful, well-aimed questions to determine whether they are someone, first of all, that you do want to work with. And if they are, and you can see the space for a bit of education, helping everyone along the way, and increasing the value of photography, not decreasing it. That's the really important distinction I would make. And great, you know, and if that means to help them along in their career, they're at a point where it would really help them if you included a license for use on Instagram or the internet or however you want to define it, then what you'll leave with them is that you're there to help, you're willing to help, and that I think can only be good.
I think the gem in what you said was that really emphasized for me is we don't know. And we don't know if this goes viral. We don't know if this actually becomes something that would get like designer of the year or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think that that definitely is something is to frame it from that perspective would be very helpful. You know, in the conversations with those people who ended up kind of giving us some heartburn over it. So thank you. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thanks. Great question.
All right, now's your chance. Last chance if anybody has any last minute things they'd like to ask or say or chime in on. And Simon, again, you can hop off if you'd like, whenever you have to. I'll keep the call going if anybody just still wanted to chat. I've got time.
I'm good for sort of maybe 5 or 10.
Cool. Yep. Simon, I'm gonna selfishly.
Yeah.
How did you like Shifter Summit? What was your perspective as a speaker and a workshop person? Is that your first time in a room with that many people? Like you talked a little bit earlier about your people and community and everything. What was your
I remember when you first started talking about an idea like that. And I thought, you're the right person to do this. You're motivated. You even at that point, without much detail, there was really strong commitment to doing something exceptional for our community. And seeing you achieve what you achieved, and I knew what you were capable of. I had a really strong sense of what you were capable of through the conversations we had. I had no idea how far you would hit this ball out of the park. Incredible what you did there. You had some great people around you, Arturo and Lauren, and a host of others that helped you for sure. I get that. But what you did for this community will be left with us forever. And to be a part of that, to come from where I've come from down here, to be witness to that, to be talking there and doing a workshop, it'll never leave me. I'm forever in your debt, and I really appreciate it, and I thank you.
Well, that was kind of, I wasn't expecting that. That was very kind of you. Yeah, obviously I'm going to push the recognition off of me and onto like, I mean, a lot of people helped with this. So it wasn't just me. Shelby and Steve are on the call. And I think others are too, but I mean, aside from that, I mean, was there anything that you took away as a photographer or as just somebody in this community? Was there anything that you took away that you found like kind of sat with you or still sits with you that you, I don't know, see things different maybe?
It's a pretty, like, I've been doing this for a while now, not as long as Carlos because he's so old, but a while. And it's a pretty lone kind of sport to be in. Like from the day to day, it's, you know, particularly down here when I started out, there was maybe one or two other guys, you know, who were doing what I did. Not a great big community of photographers around me. So the people I kind of hung out with were other types of artists, you know, sculptors, painters, definitely photographers in other genre, you know, in other genres. But even then, there wasn't really a strong sense of community. And being in one place with all of those photographers who share architecture as their focus, seeing such high levels of passion and obsession come together in one place. I mean, I'd like to say I expected that, but it knocked me over, and it's really driven me to be even more connected to all of you. And I'm, you know, I think that's a great gift for all of us, and I think we'd all probably have the same sentiment, really. I was in a room giving a very similar talk that I did in Nashville, in Wellington at a creative conference, and there were, I think, 3,000 people in an auditorium, a big old theater. And thank God the lights were super bright because I couldn't see anyone. Otherwise, I would have been a lot more nervous than I would have been. But that was quite a broad ranging creative conference for people, you know, graphic designers, for all sorts of creatives. And that was a lovely space to be in, you know, that whole weekend of different people talking across really different perspectives and genres, including Academy Award winners and all sorts of different people. And that was cool, but it felt like a community, but had nothing on Nashville, had nothing on Nashville. Like it was beautifully organized, everything you'd expect and want. But what you did in Nashville really excelled, elevated what we do. And I think it was very special.
Well, I appreciate that. And by the way, for those who did not go to Shifter Summit, this was originally just a Shifter Summit call, but I just opened it up to everybody else. So sorry you have to hear me talking about Shifter Summit if you weren't there. Not to make you feel like you missed out. You did, but it wasn't the intention to make you feel bad about it. Yeah, we'll probably be doing another one in 2025. No plans yet, but I'm starting to think about it. And
I have to wait 2 years.
yeah, this doesn't need to be an every year thing. I think we need time. Like, I would rather have one event every 2 years that's so impactful that it carries us through 2 years. I don't want to have an event every single year where we're talking about the same topics with different people. Like, everything that's going to be relevant right now is still going to be relevant in the next year. But I am trying to think of other ways we can do something, like maybe there's a retreat or something on the years in between that's a little smaller and maybe a little bit more intimate and I don't know, something that's just a little bit more of a retreat kind of vibe. Because I think the most important thing, at least that I've heard, and with all the surveys that we got back, the community, like almost every single person was like talking about like just the sense of community. Every single, it's like very consistent. And yes, the speakers are important, and people like loved the speakers. There was something for everybody that was there. But when we asked people for like one piece of overall like feedback, it was just like overwhelmingly just about being with their peers. So I feel like there's some room for that, to where it's not like a workshop, and it's like I don't like necessarily doing the traditional things. Like workshops are great. I've put them on myself. Simon's got workshops. Steve Carlish has workshops. Other people have workshops. But man, like if there was a way to have just some time with everybody for a couple days at a resort somewhere where we kind of have the place to ourselves and we can just learn from each other and kind of mastermind and workshop together over the course of a few days in a somewhat organized structure. I don't know. I think that'd be interesting. I'm still exploring ideas, but yeah, it was also a lot of work. Like, Shelby's here, Steve Magner's here. Those guys were in it from the beginning. Like it was a lot. We also did it in like 7 months, which was stupid. Just for this, for sanity's sake, but so having like a year and a half to plan it is nice. But did I say 2020? Yeah, 2026. Sorry, Bethany.
Excited.
Yeah, but it'll probably be a January, February, March thing. That's what I mean. Overwhelmingly, people said March worked out really well for everybody's schedule for the most part. Might be a little more challenging for Simon because I think or anybody in the Southern Hemisphere, because you guys are coming off of you're getting right into spring, or no, I guess you'd be what's the fall? Okay. So anyway,
I'm good for any time.
Yeah, I'd like to get you back over here. We'll have to figure out something that we can get Simon back over here, get him in the same room with everybody again.
Any excuse, I'd love it. Yeah, it's super fun to hang out, and even reasonably regular group calls like this. I think it's great, and it's really valuable, and it's nice just to feel like we're in the same room, even though it's pixels together. So thanks, Jordan, very much.
Yeah, of course. I'd like to do these at least once a month. So Matthew Anderson, also, he's not here tonight. He also has calls that he does every month. I think I would encourage anybody like just to get, even if you're not a big fan of Zoom calls, like I know Arturo and Lauren are going to be putting Arturo is going to be putting a lot of effort into trying to get people to do like shifter meetups in their cities. And there's no they're not even monetizing it or anything. It's just trying to build a community. Doesn't cost anything. I can't remember who it was, but somebody just put a shifter meetup on in Toronto. I know Patrick Biller was there. Eunice and Amanda were from I think just Eunice was there from Double Space, but trying to have like meetups in every city. Just like making this community stronger. And I think it'll just benefit everybody in the long run.
For sure.
All right. Well,
I'm gonna have to love and leave y'all.
It's great seeing you and talking to you as always, buddy.
Likewise, and all of you. Thanks so much. Really appreciate it.
Bye, Simon.
Have a
Thank you,
lovely
Simon,
evening.
for taking the time out of your day to chat with us and talk.
Okay, pleasure.
Even though most of
And
us
you
were
guys.
quiet, we're listening.
Oh, that's very cool.
Steve
That's
Steve
great.
wasn't listening. He was texting. He was giggling with people the whole time.
Oh, damn, Steve.
I'm gonna be hanging out for a bit though, if anybody still wants to talk shop or anything like that.
See you guys. Thanks so much.
Talk to
See
you
you
later,
soon.
Simon.
Thank you, Simon.
Bye for
Thanks,
now.
guys.
Bye.
All right. Glad we got rid of that guy. Jeez.